Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's "The Danger of a Single Story" outlines the effect of stereotypes and underrepresentation in literature and other media. She speaks humorously but passionately about the idea of a single story of a place or its people, infusing touching and comedic personal stories and experiences regarding the effects these representations have on society. Adichie's thesis is that the single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. The consequence of this single story is this: it robs people of dignity, it makes our recognition of equal humanity difficult, it emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. She talks about how when we focus on the singularity of white Western literature, we create an idea that no one else can exist within our stories. Adichie cements this idea by talking about how as a child she only read British and American stories, and believed that only white characters were allowed to exist within literature. She wrote her own stories about blonde-haired, blue-eyed characters who played in the snow and ate apples, despite the fact that she grew up in Africa and had no experience in any of these things. I agree with Adichie's thesis because I have grown up in a school system that still favors Western history and literature and is mostly based on the colonizer perspective of the world. Western media is also predominantly white and heteronormative, and consequently I've had a comparative experience with representation as a female. The Canadian school system is far from perfect, and there's still a long way to go in terms of accurate and representative curriculum. The novels read and films watched, unless actively changed by the teachers, are mostly white stories. From upper elementary into high school, students read novels such as The Outsiders, a story about a group of white teenage boys with no characters of color and only two female side characters, and focus on classic literature, such as Shakespeare's plays or works like William Golding's Lord of the Flies. The films are mostly white stories created by white creators. Gus Van Sant's Good Will Hunting does not have a single non-white character throughout its 2-hour runtime, and neither does Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, despite the fact that there is no reason to have an all-white cast, as it does not change the plot or message of either films. Adichie tells the audience that it is impossible to talk about the single story without talking about power, and that how stories are told, who tells them, and when they're told are really dependent on power. Even when post-colonial literature and history is discussed and learned, it is often done so through an unintentional, harmful Western point of view. The very first discussion post completed in this class had a question on whether colonizers and the colonized could live together in harmony, and the class was given an opportunity to voice opinions on colonization. These types of debates are harmful and dehumanizing to colonized nations because it does not take into account the horror and suffering they experienced and ultimately rationalizes these events and detaches us from colonization.